Hello and welcome to another Sonic Talk, episode 445 on today, April 27th, 2016 of your Earth time. This is the music production technology podcast from the UK. We go live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. You may be watching us for the first time on YouTube Live, or maybe on Twitch if there's anybody there watching that, or indeed there may be you may be in your usual place, which is sonicstate.com/live. Remember, if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, then you'll just get notified every time this gets uploaded if you can't make the live show. There's also an MP3 version as well. So that's all the housekeeping out of the way. I want to say thank you very much to our sponsors for this week. Isotope, there will be a winner of Ozone 7, their fantastic mastering bus mastering plugin, and also we've got another competition where you can win another chance. So all good stuff. So let's get straight on to our guests. We have three of them this week. I want to say thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Marc Doty from the Bob Moog Foundation, otherwise known as Automatic Gainsay, reviewer of analog polysynths, it seems, at the moment. You've got them coming out of your ears, almost.
I do. It's pretty overwhelming for a guy who actually does primarily monosynths. All of a sudden, I'm in a garden of polysynths. But I'm having a great time, actually, with it. Too much fun.
Too much fun. Is there such a thing as that? I didn't think that was possible.
For a monosynth guy, I'm having enough fun that I now feel like maybe I can't just call myself a monosynth guy. It's changing my whole reputation, I think.
Okay. This is something I was wondering, because I occasionally happens to me. You know, you get a synth in for a review, and it doesn't automatically happen straight away, or you know, you get on with it really well one day, and then the next day you have to come in. And you know, it's a bit like creativity in the studio, isn't it? In many ways, you kind of, some days it really, you're firing and it all happens, and other days you're not. How's that going for you? You finding the same, or are you just fluent synth all the time?
It's funny, with the Pro 2, which is now one of my favorite synths of all time, it was really hard to connect with it for me at first, and kind of with the Prophet 6 at first too. But with the OB6, which is over my shoulder, and the Mini-Log, I dove immediately into both of them, and I just love them. It's, so I've had there's been no adaptation time with either one of those.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I checked out the OB6 at NAMM, and it just sounds, you play something on it, you go, oh, it's that. Totally. It's really, really, it's one of the most characterful synthesizers I think I've played in a long time. Some days
it's true. And I think it's really a character synth, and I think people have been sort of staying away from character in synths, trying to focus on functionality more than character. But with the OB6, man, it's just really there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Marc Doty. And also, we're going to go to another man we haven't seen for a little while, jumping back to this side of the Atlantic to another synth cave. I have to say, Mark, slightly more impressive than yours, if you can handle that truth.
Oh, come on.
Dave Spears from G4 Software. How are you, Dave?
Bit like Ty's not on. Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, yeah. I've covered, you'll see, I've got sort of new covers. Dry cleaning covers.
Okay. Are they like synth condoms?
Yeah, you can literally just go down to the dry cleaners and go, have you got, and they do them by a roll, and they're really, really cheap, because normally I've got, they're like operating theatre drapes, and I came in one morning and I was like, it's like a morgue in here.
Yeah, you don't want that.
So they all went. So yes.
I know some of those synths. Right? So here's a thought. Now, this has just come to me, actually. Have you thought about putting them in bags and then having, like, you could get a vacuum cleaner, suck all the air out, and then they would be actually sort of almost sealed, factory fresh in goodness. You know, a bit like people always laugh about having sofas and soft furnishings covered in plastic to stop them from getting tarnished. You could still possibly just about use them. Thought about that?
Yeah. Weirdly enough, for storage. Because if you put them in flight cases, over time, all the foam breaks down, doesn't it? It goes from sticky and horrible.
Horrendous.
Disgusting.
Yeah, you don't want that.
And then it just kind of ruins things. And we were like, oh, you could put them in a bag with silica gel, but it doesn't work. And then it was like one of those duvet things that you put under the bed, and then you put the vacuum on it. And
they are amazing. They are amazing.
Yeah.
But I do digress. Might be able to try it. Anyway, Thank you, Dave. And also Robert Broniman, who is there in the client studio where he's working on, it's a long project, actually. So
it's my last week here.
It's your last week?
It is. My last week, then 3 weeks rehearsal, then 9 weeks in America on tour with OMD and the Bare Naked Ladies and Howard.
Wow, that's a busy time. So you get to you just get to sort of nip in, ask your wife to do your laundry, and then leave again.
Well, it's kind of a lot of we're kind of revamping a lot of the set and all sorts. So yeah, it's going to be quite a full on 3 weeks anyway. So
wow. Well, I am glad to hear that. Thank you very much for joining us, Robbie. And of course, this week we have to start with this really because the sad news that Prince passed away last week. I mean, you'd have to be in a cave with no kind of TV or radio wave reception to maybe avoid that. And once again, we don't, as we've done in the past, it's not a sort of, oh dear, how sad, obviously it's very sad and everything is kind of unexpected, but in many ways it gives us a chance to celebrate the man and his amazing work because as we know, he is one of the most prolific musicians of our time. Love him or hate him, whatever it is, you can't deny that the man is undeniably talented, multi-instrumentalist. And I know that amongst the panel we do have some real fans. And, it is sad, but it also certainly gave me the chance to kind of revisit a lot of his work and check out a lot of videos and, all of these kind of stories of him turning up on stage and playing and generally, as a rule, blowing away whoever it is he's been asked to guest with off stage. Quite obviously as well. So I wonder if after a while you might stop getting invited if you do that sort of thing. But I know, Mark, you're a huge Prince fan, very influential artist, and certainly in your musical upbringing, right?
Absolutely. I recently stated, and this is really interesting, but it came to mind, and I stated it to someone I was in a conversation with. I said, Prince is basically my David Bowie.
Right.
And he pretty much everything I have ever done in the music business, even what I'm doing now, has some connection to Prince, largely just because he was such a massive inspiration to me. And I would have never done any of the things I've done had it not been for my appreciation of his charisma and talent.
Wow, that's saying something. I mean and I can understand that. I mean, I agree. In many ways, Prince was my kind of David Bowie as well. I mean, I think I was probably just a year too young to have got all of his early works and kind of really. I mean, I appreciate him and I think he's great, but it just didn't have the same resonance as me and as Prince did for me. And I would tend to agree with that. I know, Dave, you were also a big fan of the man. Did it mean a lot to you? Any particular album that kind of got you just hooked?
Yeah, Sign of the Times was where it all started for me. And we had a conversation earlier about the fact that it seemed to be a kind of, particularly this track seemed to be a kind of demo. It had a demo rawness to it. And then I went back and looked at older stuff. But for me, and I've said this on my Facebook, the Love Sexy album was just everything for me for years. There was just a moment in time for me that I met the missus. It was our first, I've said this publicly, so I'm not embarrassed to say it was our first, what do we call it, horizontal kiss. By the time we'd got to that track, Anesthesia, it was just like everything. Anyway, it was just a kind of crazy, crazy time. And also, I love that album because, and I've pulled it out today in homage, it's all D50. It's just everything is D50 on that album.
Love Sexy.
From the Arco strings right from the beginning to right to the end. The native. Hang on, I'll see if I can pull it up.
Digital dance.
Native digital dance.
Oh, right.
And then even better, we go right at the end of the album. We go.
Soundtrack. Is that soundtrack?
Yeah, which I know off by heart. It's 37. And then obviously for Anesthesia we've even got, which is a D50 piano for God's sake. So really simple triads. Yeah, and amazing. And I think it's the last album that he did where he specifically, he'd obviously fallen in love with it. as an instrument. And everything after that became, well, obviously there was a Batman thing, and then it became the New Power Generation, and it was more of a band thing with real, traditional instruments and stuff. But yeah, so for me, that's a monster album.
Thank you. I think I'm coming through your speakers, Dave.
There you go.
But
not now.
No, thank you. Robbie, how about you? I mean, does Prince have the same resonance in your world?
Yeah, he's been one of those artists. I guess I always have much more of a fascination. A lot of people kind of lump him alongside Michael Jackson as these kind of two sort of enigmas of our time that were just like geniuses. But I've always had much more of a fascination for Prince, just because of all the mythology around him and his supposed vault of thousands of songs unreleased, and the fact he wrote 2 songs a day supposedly, and all the and his work, and everyone I've ever met who's kind of met him says about him just like virtually never sleeping and just working and working and all this stuff. I've always kind of had that kind of fascination. I love that album that Dave said. I actually loved the Batman soundtrack he did, which I think was the next album he did after after Lovesexy, I think. But yeah, I mean, just going and reviewing some footage in the last few days, I'm sure like everybody else, it's just unbelievable. His versatility, it's just sickening the way he could just get on the drums or bass or guitar or anything and just be like better than most people who only dedicate themselves to one instrument. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It just kind of came out of his fingers, didn't it? It was amazing. Yeah. And the fact that he could give a sterile drum box some real soul. I did meet him once. That's weird, isn't it?
Wow, did you?
Yeah,
do
but
tell.
I didn't think it was him. I was at NAMM. And I was on this booth, and this little guy comes up, and it's Prince, but he's really tiny, and he's flanked by 2 kids in like Chips Cops uniforms. And I thought it was like, because like on some of the booths they have those.
There's lots
Marilyn
of looky-likes,
yeah. Yeah, and I thought it was that. And I noticed that everybody, it wasn't even my booth, but he started asking me about this synth, which I had helped in the development of. So I was talking to him about it. And I was thinking, as I'm kind of talking to him, in fact, it's really funny because he's so quiet. He was so quiet, I kind of went, what? Sort of like that, and the kids kind of looked at me like they were about to pull out their guns. I don't know. I'm like, well, this is really quite surreal. Is this a look and sound alike, Prince? Anyway, what I noticed is that there's loads of people in the background just kind of looking at me like horrified, like I'm going to say the wrong thing and going to get killed or something. And then afterwards, they all came up. What did he say? What did he say? And I honestly don't really remember because it's so surreal. It's like, those moments where you think, was that real or did I dream that? Anyway, I found out later it was really him. Because it's probably difficult to get somebody who looks exactly the same and is exactly the same size and speaks the same.
That's true. That's a great one. I haven't got any. I mean, the other thing that, just going back to Sign of the Times, the one thing that I actually was doing a bit of research, I wrote a little piece on Sonic last week about it. But at the time, it was the time when I was working 4-track Atari drum machine, just trying to make some music. And when that album came out, it sat, like you say, it had a sort of demo vibe to it. In fact, it got quite a lot of stick from the music critic press saying, it's unfinished, it's not properly done. But for me, it was massively inspiring because I just thought, well, if somebody who's a multi-instrumentalist, which incidentally I was at the time, sort of, well, I tried to play instruments. I found it hugely inspiring. I thought, well, if he can do it and it's acceptable, then there's hope. It means it gave me a huge amount of inspiration, and I think that's one thing that was definitely I would credit him for. But the other thing is, reading up on it, it turns out that album was one of the most expensive he ever made because it took so long in the studio, and it was actually really heavily crafted to sound that way, which kind of was a little bit of a letdown in many ways, but I suppose that's just the way it goes. But yeah, very influential. So Mark, have you? I know you're a big fan. Have you got any being near any Prince stories you care to share with us? I know you did say you posted something about the story of the Prince letter or Prince's writing that you had on a sheet, but you said it was an hour and a half, so you might need to summarise it somewhat.
Yeah. Okay, so before I really did anything in the music business, my music obsession was Prince, and I decided that I was going to actually meet him and get to be best friends with him. But as it turned out, instead of that, I actually got a job at Paisley Park and worked there for 6 months.
Wow.
So I have maybe a million Met Prince stories, but yeah. So I was around him quite a bit. We never did get to be friends and never really had any substantive conversations, but I was around him a very great deal, and it was unbelievable. It was absolutely amazing, and I had to be careful too because I didn't meet him naturally, like in a music context. I was basically an employee, so I had to be really careful about like interfering with anything that he was doing, or like coming up to him and grabbing his lapels and saying, "Oh my God, you're God to me," which, you know, obviously would have been a
sackable offense, I'd imagine.
Grounds for dismissal. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was an incredible experience.
Oh, wait up there. Okay, right. So what was it that you did? And tell me about Paisley Park as well, because that's one thing that I'm really fascinated by. In the same way, it was like Gabriel did the same sort of thing, Peter Gabriel, where he was in charge of his music in the same way that Prince was to a very great degree, and he built these kind of studio complex, Real World, and before that there was Ashcombe House, and these are the places that were built around his creativity. So I need to know more, Mark.
Well, it was a temple. It was an amazing place. It is an amazing place. There's 3 studios. It has a tremendous sound stage where a lot of the videos were shot. It's got offices all over the place. I'm not sure. There's a new building in the back I don't know anything about. But yeah, I mean, what would you like to know?
What was it that you were doing there then? What was your actual role in the proceedings?
Well, I had a really important position. Now, I was the administrative assistant to the general manager of Paisley Park Retail.
Okay.
That was
so was there a whole sort of like merchandise and that side of things that I didn't know? It wasn't like open to the public or anything, was it?
Well, actually, just before I got there, Prince had opened a retail store in Minneapolis and in London, and he also had a telephone ordering sort of a catalog order hotline called 1-800-NEW-FUNK. And so the retail division came about to sort of administrate all of these retail-related things, and yeah.
Wow, okay.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So, I mean, was there I'm guessing there was an enormous amount of creativity going on, because as we know, he sort of used to befriend, or not manage, but take bands under his wing and sort of bring them through as projects. Was he the kind of producer of all of that sort of stuff, or was it sort of just the studio function and it was just his facility that was being used?
Well, he got into this thing when it had started. I think it started the year before, but while I was there, he had these Love for One Another concerts that he had pretty much every weekend at Paisley Park, and the general public was able to come in and watch these performances on the soundstage. And he often had other bands playing that he liked opening for him, and I got to see him perform. I don't even know how many times. Many times. And it was kind of dangerous for me because I kind of needed to keep a low profile because I wasn't supposed to be a fan and working there. But for every performance that Prince did, I was like within the first couple of people from the stage. Like I was there. And I kind of pretend like, yeah, I work here, so this is kind of a security thing. But really it was just me staring up at Prince going, this is the best performer I have ever seen in my life. And that's still true. No offense to anyone, but he was the very most talented performer I have ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, he was. That's the one thing that's clear with all these videos that are now surfacing of him playing with. There's a brilliant one with him with James Brown, which I might play a little later on, where he just gets called up on stage, just does his thing, really disjointedly, but someone hands him a guitar that's one of the rhythm guitarists, and he plays, then he dances, then he kind of does the James Brown moves better than James Brown can, and then walks off the stage. And as he walks off the stage, he holds onto this lamppost that's part of the set, and it falls over, and so he leaves the stage in complete complete chaos. It's absolutely brilliant. Wow, Mark, I'm really I don't know what to say about that. Robbie, you were saying, I mean, this is the other thing also. Obviously, he was a very secretive fellow, wasn't he? And there was a lot of it's almost the first rule of working for Prince is you can't talk about Prince. But I mean, have you got anything that you can share with us? Because I know you knew maybe a person or two.
I got a couple of stories. One of them's a very funny story. I've got a friend called Kevan Frost. He's a bass player primarily, but a multi-instrumentalist. He's the MD for Culture Club and Boy George. He does everything with Boy George and John Themis. And he was like the biggest Prince fan ever, a bit like Mark. And a long time ago, Prince came to a Culture Club gig in America and was watching it backstage, and they didn't know. And afterwards, he was backstage, Prince. And so Kevan was like, this is it, this is my time, this is my moment. Anyway, someone brought him over and introduced Prince to Kevan. And Kevan went, oh, I think I've left my car open, I've got to go and check if my car's locked, and walked off.
He couldn't handle it, he just couldn't.
He just totally froze, totally blanked out. Walked off and thought, that's it, it's ruined, I've lost my moment. But anyway, weirdly, he got a phone call the next day. They were in the Minneapolis area. He got a phone call saying Prince would really like you to come to the studio to Paisley Park on your own. And this car came to the hotel and picked him up really late at night, and he was driven to Paisley Park. He went into the main studio, and there was Prince just sitting there on his own. And he sat with Prince for about 3 or 4 hours, and Prince said, I really want to play you some of my new tracks, see what you think. And they just sat there listening to tracks for about 3 or 4 hours, just chatting about music. And then he said goodbye, and that was it. That was it.
The royal summons.
One sort of audience with Prince. So yeah. That was quite, but that's quite. But the other one, which I thought was really kind of goes in with the kind of Prince mythology very much, is that there's a girl called Ida Nielsen, who's a friend of mine, who did a lot of stuff with me when I was doing stuff for TC at NAMM Frankfurt. She's a bass player, and a few years ago she got a phone call from somebody saying, this is Prince's management team. Prince has seen some of the videos you've done at NAMM and Frankfurt for TC Electronic online, and he'd like you to come out and audition for him. Jesus. And she just thought it was some sort of wind-up, because, again, this was her ultimate goal in life, was that she wanted to play bass for Prince. And she obviously thought, like most people, it was never going to happen. So anyway, she put the phone down on this person, thinking it was just one of her friends making a joke. But they rang back and said, no, this really is the case. Would you be up for it? And she said, yes, definitely. So she waited and waited, and a few weeks passed, and nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, one day, this plane ticket turned up at her house saying, this is when Prince wants you to come over, and you've got to learn all these songs, etc., etc., etc. So she flew out. She flew out to Minneapolis, and then she sat in this hotel for 3 days or something like that. Nothing. It didn't hear from anybody. And again, just one night, she got this. There was a call from the front desk that said there's going to be a car outside to pick you up. It was pretty late at night, and take you down to Paisley Park. So she went down to Paisley Park and was taken into this big room. She said it was a big, I don't know what, a big room. And just in the middle, there was Prince with a guitar and a piano, and she went over there, and they jammed for about 4 or 5 hours, literally just incessantly jammed and talked. And eventually he said, what do you think, to her? And she went, what do you mean, what do I think? And then all of a sudden these voices all came out saying, oh, great. And all these other people have been watching from behind like two-way mirrors.
Wow.
So he basically said, you're my new bass player. Anything you want, equipment, we don't do any endorsements, anything you want, just let me know, it's all going to be sorted out. And then she went on to be, she was his last bass player right up until he, she's been touring with him for the last 5 years as part of Third Eye Girl, which was the kind of the 3-girl trio that has been kind of his backing band. And she just said it was like it was just a dream come true on a retainer permanently, and how amazing he was as a person. And that kind of fits with the kind of unconventional way that he does things,
Wow, there's nothing like being put on the spot like that. Wow, I mean, and fair play to her for being able to deal with that, because I'd just go to... Well, I'd have said no, because I'd just be too terrified.
When she went to the first proper rehearsals, she was given a list of over 200 songs that she had to learn.
Wow.
Jeez.
And 20 minutes in which to do it.
Wow.
Yeah, 200 songs that he might want to pull out at any time. Or something like that,
Wow.
Amazing.
That is incredible. That is. I mean, I guess that transition, because you were talking the transition from Love Sexy to when it became New Power Generation and more a band kind of scenario, which must have been very liberating for him. If you can get the right musicians around you, you can just kind of go, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, go, and they just go with you, rather than having to construct the whole thing around an idea, which I'm sure he was very good at as well. So, that's fantastic. What a great
that idea of just being so, I don't know, just having all of those people around and just going, right, you that. There's that great footage, isn't there, on that's doing the rounds at the minute of him doing Summertime at some sound check.
Yeah.
And it's like telepathic. I believe that's what he tried with Sheena Easton as well, wasn't it? But it's like that kind of telepathic ability to go, right, I want you to play that and you to play that. The Van Morrison thing, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
again, you got to know 500 songs or whatever to get in this band, to even get a look in. It's amazing. Utterly amazing.
Yeah. And I was driving my daughter down to visit a friend over the weekend, and I was talking about Prince and, just explaining how important it was. And, there was a sort of medley of his hits, and, it was, and the one thing that really shone out amongst all of it was obviously he was a big user of the Lindrum LM1, and he basically made the rim shot hip. That was, the rim shot was kind of almost front. It was probably the loudest thing in most of his mixes, when it was used as a hook. And then after that, he was flicking around, listening to the charts, and there was all this sort of, nondescript dance music, all with rim shots in it, and I just thought that is quite an interesting legacy that, you would be, and such a tiny thing when you think about it, such a tiny legacy, but also kind of a really important one. And it's 200 milliseconds long. It's kind of quite. Anyway, that's
amazing. I think that's what intrigued me about the D50 thing. It was just like, because he's so well known for the Oberheim stuff with 1999, and then comes this album, which was an amazing album. In fact, it was quite annoying, wasn't it? Because on the CD it was all one track. You couldn't actually skip to any parts unless you, like me, knew off by heart that this track starts off. Yeah, which is quite sad, but. And then all of a sudden this album comes along and it's just like the Oberheim is dust.
Was it all was it all presets then, or program stuff? Do you know?
Yeah. I mean, even the string stuff is that. I keep thinking it's the Arco strings, but it's not. It's the Jetto strings or something. Yeah, those.
Wow.
We all know.
So I like the way, Dave, you just dialed that preset in from memory there, and you were straight in. There was no wiggling around with the alpha dial or anything there.
It's the fact that I know that soundtrack is 37. So I haven't. This is the D550, which has been in a rack down there for probably I've been here 3 years. It's never been switched on. And yesterday I thought, you know what, I'm going to get it out. Because actually what happened is I posted a couple of my thoughts about Prince on Facebook, and a mate who's an amazing guitar tech with a million bands, he came on saying, and I'd said about the D50 thing, and he came on saying, do you want a D50? And I went, well, we've got a D550, but it's not quite the same. And he went, well, you can have mine if you want. And I was just like, wow. So actually I've ended up with a D550 and a D50. But so I fired this up yesterday, and I thought, where's that piano from Anesthesia? And I was just going through a couple of sounds, and my fingers just hit 37 and soundtrack came up, and it was just like, after all these years, it's like an old friend. And that's why I really liked that Eric Persing interview you did, because obviously he was one of the major patches on this. I think I'd have retired, having heard my patches on Love Sexy. I'd have just gone,
no,
I've done, my work here is done.
That's a very good point. I mean, soundtrack didn't start there. It was on the MT32, and I use soundtrack a lot. If you gate it, You can, in fact, it's all over mixes that I did of the time where I put it through a gate and just triggered it. So you go da 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 da. You know, of that. What is it? Fourths or fifths? The interval between the partials. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But it's like playing polychords, isn't it? Where you have one chord superimposed over another. Sounds fantastic. Oh wow, we could just go on for hours with this, and we probably will. But I should probably take a moment just to introduce a message from our friends at Isotope. And you can use this to maybe have a glass of water or whatever you might need to do. Anyway, in the meantime.
Produce rich, full, professional-sounding tracks with the critically acclaimed mastering tools in Ozone and Ozone Advanced. Now, the latest Isotope innovations in Ozone 7 bring modern and vintage processing to the forefront of the music production experience. Updated for Ozone 7, Ozone's highly regarded maximizer features a brand new frequency-specific IRC4 algorithm that delivers transparent mixes with less pumping and distortion. Use it to smooth out an unwieldy mix, or tame the kick drum peaks without affecting the vocals. The Dynamic EQ, now in both the advanced and standard versions of Ozone, lives and breathes with your audio, giving you more effective control over your sound without coloring your entire mix. Harness the precision of an equalizer and the musical ballistics of a compressor in one integrated processor. New for Ozone 7, vintage-inspired processing puts nostalgic tone at your fingertips to bring the creative color and character of analog hardware to your digital recordings. Glue your mix together and bring a natural feel to harsh-sounding recordings with the Vintage Limiter. Vintage tape adds the dimension, warmth, and depth of tape saturation to your masters for a timeless sound that suits your creative vision.
That's it. Thank you very much, Ozone. If you want to check out Isotope's Ozone, which is a fantastic mastering plugin, sweeten up pretty much any audio, does a lot of great things. Isotope.com/Ozone. And of course, we did have a competition last week where we gave you the chance to win a copy of Ozone 7, or Isotope did for sure. And we have a winner. The winner is a chap called... Well, I guess he's a chap. At Redfern Mike is his Twitter handle. At Redfern Mike. If you're listening, you must know who you are. Please get in touch, and the Isotope Fairy will certainly leave you a present. In fact, his accompanying text was, "I'm leaving my laptop under my pillow so the Isotope Fairy can leave ozone on it." Isn't that a lovely thought? Your wish has come true. So please do get in touch and let us know how you felt about it and how it was for you. So, right, we also have another competition this week where you can also win Ozone 7. You need to be on Twitter. That's the only proviso, but it's a painless thing. It doesn't mean you have to habitually view it day after day, but... You need to tweet the hashtag audio polish, that's one word, hashtag audio polish and the hashtag Ozone 7 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. Tweet the hashtag audio polish, Ozone 7 to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. and you will get the chance to win a copy of Ozone 7. Thanks very much to them for sponsoring the show. Lordy. Right, what to say also, while we're here, hello to our YouTube live video viewers. We've got a bunch of people there. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat room there. And also, hello to our fulsome chat room. Nice bunch of people in there as well. Look at it. The stream just goes past. So once again, I should say, if you're watching live, please do subscribe to us on YouTube and you'll get notifications of when this is put up online if you haven't had the chance to subscribe yet. So, guys, next up, right, we have... I think it must be. Let me see. Actually, I need to go here. This is the next bit of news. This is a documentary that's actually coming up on from the guys who made I Dream of Wires, who is in fact Robert Fantinato and Jason Am, and they're putting together a new documentary. And I've got a little bit of an intro here. I won't play it all because it's quite long.
Hi, my name's Michelle Moog Kusa. My father was electronic music pioneer Bob Moog, whose invention of the Moog synthesizer in 1964 revolutionized the face of music. I'm excited to announce that production has begun on a film with the makers of I Dream of Wires, where I will be taking a journey, retracing my father's footsteps from his childhood home in Queens, New York, all the way through to his eventual settlement in Asheville, North Carolina. I will be talking with, traveling with, some of the most significant people who were impacted by my father's life and work. My father dedicated himself to designing a long line of iconic musical instruments, including the Moog Modular, the Mini Moog, the Moog Voyager, and so many more.
Right, I won't play the whole thing. I urge you to watch that Kickstarter. I mean, Marc Doty, obviously, you are also involved in the Bob Moog Foundation, and Michelle being your boss, effectively. Hi, Michelle, because we met at NAMM at a particularly alcohol-fueled party night on Saturday night, which I have fond memories of. But back to business. So this sounds like quite an interesting... I mean, it's much more about sort of Bob Moog, the guy, really, and his journey, right?
Totally. And, you know, I've seen some people say, well, isn't there already a Moog documentary? And I think you guys have probably all seen the movie Moog, and it's a great movie, and it's really interesting. It's kind of a portrayal of Bob the man, and it's beautiful. But when I first saw it, when it came out, I thought, you know what I really wished was that it was like the history of Bob's work with synthesizers. I mean, that's really what I kind of wanted, and I think some other people did too. But this Electronic Voyager is going to be that through all of the people who were involved, the celebrities, the people from R.A. Moog that were actually instrumental in the creating of, no pun, the instruments. And it's this sprawling plan to sort of reveal the history of Bob. And it's really, I'm really excited about it. It's all of the things that you don't know about what Bob did and how he did it, I think are going to be revealed in this documentary. And for me, you know, as a person who is a historian about synthesizer history, I'm overwhelmed with excitement. I mean, the list of people who are actually going to be in the movie, Michelle's going to interview all of these famous keyboard players and historical synthesizer-related people, and it's sprawling. It's really going to be amazing.
I'm looking forward to that. Are you going to be in it, Mark? I just have to ask the question because you've been around the place. Are you going to get a cameo role?
I'm not really. I mean, they're mostly interviewing people who like actually worked with Bob or interacted with Bob and who were actually part of the history. And there's a few others like Moby who didn't and wasn't, but of course it's Moby. So, but yeah, I'm not going to be in the movie, but I will undoubtedly help in whatever way that they want to make it.
Excellent. So I'm guessing you're probably going to be involved in the nuts and bolts of that and know all the interesting stuff. That sounds great. It sounds like a really good, yet another thing that you're presumably going to have to take on. But do you know when it's going to be coming out? Because it's not clear. It seems like they're saying next summer, but then certain things may be a bit later. Do you know what the schedule is for this?
The only thing I know is that it's going to be released next year and made this year. So, and there's a lot of traveling because I don't know if you've seen the list. Go to the Kickstarter page and look at the list of people that are actually going to be interviewed. And I have it here. I'm looking at it. I mean, it's just a gigantic list of people that Michelle will have to go and meet and interview. So it's going to be quite a process to actually make the film.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But yeah, a
lot. Well, that sounds great. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be another. I mean, I guess, Dave, in many ways, it's a similar kind of concept, but more tightly focused to the thing that you did with Bright Sparks, which was kind of focus on the people behind the innovation.
Yeah. And the truth is, if I had my way, Bright Sparks would have been about 6 hours long, with a few hours dedicated to each, because each of the stories I'm a synth nerd. I have to admit it. But for me, each of first of all, it was amazing to hear all of these stories, and each of them there were so many bits that I just couldn't leave out. So this idea of having one dedicated to, arguably the most important, is really exciting. And I'm fortunate enough to know Michelle. In fact, I had a weird thing yesterday. Michelle asked me to make an introduction to Alan Perlman's daughter, who is the kind of protector of Alan. And that was quite a moment, because I'd been engineering this meeting, this introduction, for a few weeks, and it finally happened yesterday. And I was just kind of sat there ready to send the email. I was on the phone to somebody. I was on the phone to Kent, and I said, I'm just about to make this introduction. And we just kind of both went, whoa, that's pretty amazing, really. The two daughters of the two kind of major icons, and you're kind of going, here, you two talk to each other. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that. But what can I say? I think best of luck, and it has to happen. I've been trying to help out, put a few people in touch with a few people with regards to the guys who are making it, and everybody seems really, really committed and dedicated, and it's quite exciting, really.
Excellent. I mean, yes, that is. There probably are only two people who could be in that position, who could have that conversation. It's a very unique scenario. But Robbie, this sort of the backstory is always really fascinating with this sort of thing. It does definitely kind of add more life to the whole, not really the myth, but the story behind these kind of great pioneers, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Dave said, for anyone who's interested to an obsessive degree in music technology, and more importantly, since this is like the best kind of documentaries you can hope for, to really understand, how everything started, and the humble beginnings, and all the, just the kind of the twists and turns along the way that brought these things into being. So I'll look forward to it, just like I look forward to Dave's one, just like I look forward to I Dream of Wires, all these things, and the Moog one. Sorry, you said before. I've lapped them all up as they've come along. I mean, I can't get enough of them. Yeah. So I look forward to it, even if it is going to be about a year and a half down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with these. I mean, they do take a lot of time. I mean, a lot of time and effort. I mean, documentaries, even though they have a sort of, the less of a cinematic quality to them, just the logistics in putting these kind of things together. I mean, I'm sure Dave, is just an enormous amount of work and just kind of coaxing.
It was 18 months, I think I spent on it. 18 months. And it was one of those things where, and I know the I Dream of Wires guys are probably going to be equally, if not more, obsessive about it. And it's just those that, you dream it, and you wake up and you go, oh yeah, maybe there's a different kind of angle there. And then you're just talking to people and you're unearthing all these nuggets the whole time. And that's what I'm really fascinated about this one, because, the Bright Sparks thing was a band paying tribute to various pioneers, and me trying to kind of make connections and talk to people who had been involved, or who were the kind of, around at that time, or who were the originators. For me, the Alan Perlman thing was probably, it was amazing. But this idea that the daughter of, and one of the things Michelle said in Bright Sparks was that she was largely unaware of what her father did until after he died. And then all of a sudden people started contacting, saying, he meant this to me and he influenced me in this aspect and that. And it becomes for me, it became, the whole Bright Sparks thing was this immensely personal journey. For her, to multiply to the power of 10, 100 even.
I can imagine, that's going to be an awful lot of stuff to do. I'm looking for, there's all sorts of different rewards you can get. There's all sorts of one-off merch stuff, T-shirts, ties. In fact, Suit and Tie guy said, "Oh, there's a keyboard, there's a Moog tie. That's for me." Basically, I think he's probably going to back that. They're looking to raise. They've got 28 days to go. Looking to raise, I think, $125,000. Still got a way to go. It's Canadian dollars, so I don't know what that means. Whether that's significantly less or significantly more than an than a US dollar. I'm afraid I'm unaware of the exchange rate. We don't have any Canadian clients. But yeah, please go and check it out. It's definitely, it's on the website. It'll be on, I guess, Mark, you linked from the Moog Foundation as well, .org.
Yeah. If you just enter into Google, like Kickstarter and Moog, it'll take you, the first link will be the one. That's what I've been doing. It's super simple. But yeah, and please go and contribute to this, because I, as a fan of synthesizer, I need to see this made. I want to see it made, and I know a lot of people do. So, I just want to encourage people to contribute, because this is going to be a huge, amazing thing.
Well said. Yes, I agree with that. Right. Actually, there's just to throw you a little bit of a curveball. In the YouTube comments, Guitar Vibe 75 has said, "Hey, since Dave Spears is on from GeForce, I was wondering whether Oddity 2 and Imposca would be on NKS soon, which is the Native Instruments Control format." There's a question for you, Dave. Just want to throw that one in. Sorry to change course so dramatically, but I thought comments are for commenting.
They asked us a while ago. Our problem is just simply resources. We're like a tiny little organisation who have pretty much the year planned out. So it's very difficult for us to go, oh, right, let's stop doing that and let's go and look at that. If anyone knows or wants to do it for us, and I'd be really interested in talking to somebody. I believe most of the work's on the patch side of things, whilst there is a little bit of coding to do. But yeah, the will is there, but no, not immediately.
Okay, well, no, thank you for that, and I'm sorry to spring that one on you so much. Right, well, and now here's a mega production. Check this out. I won't play it all, and actually that doesn't look, I mean, it still looks like a big production, but it's nothing compared to what's actually happening. This is news that Hans Zimmer is actually on tour at the moment, performing some of his greatest works from, his massive amount of movie credits. There's all sorts of stuff there. Big arena tour. I was just looking at this. I mean, there's actually a full orchestra as well as all that lot. And this is these are playing in very large venues with various special guests. And what's interesting about this, to me at least, is that in the promo for the entire tour, one of his opening lines is, "I spent my whole life terrified about being on stage." So why not force yourself to go on stage with 50 other musicians where, even if you have the slightest kind of wobble, it's going to be amplified 9 million times. This is European leg. I don't know if they're doing a US leg, but I imagine they probably would be. But this looks like a massive production, and it's quite a major thing. I don't know. Do you know anything about this one, Robbie? Have you been to see it? Because, I mean, you've been a man about town.
I love things like this, but the interesting thing was Howard and I went to, at the end of the tour last year, we went to see BT do his electronic opus in Miami. The one-off gig he did with the orchestra. And that was arranged by an arranger, what's his name? Tommy Tallarico, who's done a lot of big video game orchestrations. And I remember he was telling us at the time that Hans Zimmer was planning to do this. But he was talking to us about the economics of the reality of taking orchestras on tour.
Yeah,
and basically how BT did it was he had like a skeleton orchestra with some stuff running, and then you had a skeleton of the orchestra which was able to be mixed in with it to create the sound. But of course, Tommy was saying, he's been talking to Hans, and Hans wasn't having any of it. It was going to be the full-on symphony orchestra on tour, and he was just saying, I hope he makes some money, because it's the most big monster to take on tour. But obviously he's doing it, and I wish him all the luck in the world. I'd love to go and see it.
It sounds like it's going to be a fairly major event, actually. And I mean, I'm just thinking, all of those instruments many of the orchestras are priceless. Does that mean, because you see people on planes coming back from NAMM where they've got their guitar, next to them? Does that mean every flight you take, you've got to have like two seats, one for the instrument and one for the artist? I don't know. It seems like an amazing concept. I don't know, Mark. I don't know if you're a fan of Zimmer's work. I mean, he is a legendary in terms of not only his orchestral work, but in terms of his just appreciation and collection of synthesizers and use of them within this whole kind of scenario of creating film music, right?
Absolutely. And like his modular work, a guy doing what he does, and he still does use his modulars in his scoring. And I mean, you've probably seen the pictures of his studio. They're like walls of modulars built into the wall, a huge Roland system, a huge Moog system. Michelle actually went to meet him one of the NAMMs we were at, and it was one of the few times I think I've ever just wanted so badly to kind of grab onto her coat and say, will you please take me with you during this meeting, because I would love to meet Hans. He's so amazing, so incredible. Yeah, I've always been a very large fan.
Ah, well, that's good to know. I know, Dave, I mean, have you been to Zimmer's place? I think you probably have, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Yeah. I mean, I know that there's an element of impressing the film producer community if they walk into your studio and you've got this huge wall of analog electronics beautifully lit and what have you. But, I mean, it's great that he actually uses them as well. I don't think he's taking them on tour, though, right?
A lot of studios out the back. No, I don't know. He did this last year, though, didn't he?
I didn't know.
I know he did, because actually I had approached him. Maybe it was the year before. I'd approached him to talk in the Bright Sparks documentary, and he was over here rehearsing. I think initially he was at John Henry's, and then I think they went to. I think they were using Wembley Arena to rehearse, and somebody involved in the camp told me what the budget was, and it was kind of so huge, per day. The cost per day of rehearsing an orchestra in Wembley Arena was just. It was so mental, I kind of forgot about it. I don't know whether it was true or not, but yeah, really interesting. Remote control is an amazing place. There's a lot of studios out the back where his what would you call them, apprentices or the grafters do all the work. And then you've got the kind of the bordello room where that's the impress the client's room. But actually, when we were there, just off of that, he had the world's largest modular, the Phil Sirocco, the CMS. Which just kind of blew my mind. That was right next to a PPG and a Moog modular that had been completely restored. I think it was Mike Bucky who'd done that, and it was just absolutely pristine. And then the Roland stuff on the wall in the main studio was, I think he bought that by the kilo, didn't he?
There we go. There's a few shots in beautiful soft focus with those. This looks wow. Looks like something out of a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, it's amazing. And actually, it's other than that, it's a really bland building from the outside, which is cool, because you've got no idea of what's inside. I think when we were there, the only thing that gave away that it was kind of a pretty cool place inside possibly was the Tesla outside. But my theory with this is that, you see, don't forget, Hans was part of the whole Trevor Horn, Video Killed the Radio Star scene, wasn't he?
Oh, really?
Yeah. A good friend of mine was part of that, and the theory is that this is kind of Hans's rock star. He even does a guitar solo. Oh, he did last year. He did a guitar solo, didn't he, on stage? So this is his kind of, his last chance to rock out as a kind of rock star in front of thousands of people.
Well, great. I mean, it's a hell of a way to. It's probably the most expensive therapy you could possibly imagine. I'm sure he could probably just go to a hypnotherapist for a few $100 instead, and get over and then do a few local.
Well, I was thinking he could just take a Reeboks, couldn't he? And the Albert Hall and a Reeboks tape machine, and still people would come. It cost him like £15, and still people would come.
What I thought was amazing is, Junkie XL Tom, who's been working with him for a load of years. I thought it was amazing. I read about him a couple of years ago, how he basically sort of decamped to Hollywood and basically became his assistant, and just sort of, like he said, he was like, one minute he was like the only person in the world to have ever remixed Elvis Presley, and have that massive success and be like this amazing figure in the electronic music world. And then he sort of decamped to Hollywood and just was like in the basement doing all the kind of assistant kind of jobs to a lot of Hans Zimmer's scores, just kind of working his way back up to kind of move into a whole other part of his career. Which I thought was pretty amazing. You know, now he's scoring all those amazing films like Mad Max and Deadpool and all that stuff. I just thought it's amazing that someone who was already at the top of their game kind of went, you know, well, I'll just have a bit of a sidestep into another area and I'll kind of almost retrain. Which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, you know, we've got the orchestra and we've got all of those things for this live event, but I can't. I mean, how many drummers is he going to have? Because every single Hans Zimmer track, you know, it's just full of multi-track toms. You know, it's just tons and tons and tons of it. He's sort of the master of the taiko drum on the jump cut of a shutting door kind of school of scoring, which certainly has its purpose. Yeah. But it must be a lot of drums they're having to take with them as well, I should think.
I've got a friend in LA who's done a lot of stuff with him, and he told me that they not very long ago they hired out the whole lot of one of the big studios up there, MGM a lot or something, because they wanted to set up like about 100 taiko drummers and play them through the public address system and record it.
Jesus.
And it was just like the most ridiculous, excessive kind of thing to do. But it's like, he said, they love doing these kind of things because it kind of injects the process with a bit of fun.
Well, and also, I'd imagine it
can do these things.
Oh, and also it gives you notoriety within the film world, which is kind of one thing that he's obviously very good at. It's that thing, isn't it, when you get sort of great artists, conceptual artists or contemporary artists, and what that, as well as the work that they do, the other thing that they're generally really, really good at is talking a good game and it's almost sales, but talking in the right language to the client so that they feel like they're getting this amazing musical event or art event or whatever it may be. And it strikes me that Hans Zimmer has that ability, you know, because he's taken Hollywood over pretty much, hasn't he? I mean, I think there's a lot of other composers around. I'm not saying he's the most famous. He's probably one of the most famous in the world, I would imagine. But there are others there. But he's got that foothold because he's just so good at liaising with them, I guess.
These amazing. Sorry, I was going to just say that these amazing round table kind of videos. I can't remember what they're called on YouTube.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Where there's few film, you know, famous film composers talking, and there was one classic line. There's a group of them, and they're like really big people. It wasn't like Hans Zimmer and a few unknowns. It's like all the big names, and they all just said, "Oh, thanks very much, Hans. Every score we do, we always get asked, can you do something like Hans Zimmer?" That kind of set the benchmark that everybody else had to sort of attain to.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, have you ever done any work to picture like that? I mean, not orchestral, but I mean, it's quite a challenging gig, isn't it?
Yes, I did a tiny bit of it back in the early aughts when I lived in Minneapolis, and I was doing a lot of scoring for theater and sketch comedy. But there were a few little attempts at film, and I loved it. But it was really challenging, especially with the technology that I had at that point, which a lot of it was guessing and good luck. But
it has become an awful lot easier now. Though, of course, if you're working on a PC, remember not to use QuickTime anymore because it's a bad thing at the moment, as you will have noticed from last week's story on the vulnerability. But yes. Well, it seems that we have reached our point of exit, I think, and we've covered all the topics that are in the list, which is awesome. So I want to say thank you very much to my guest. Some fantastic print stuff there. Absolutely brilliant. Before we go, though, I should just quickly remind you that if you want to win a copy of Ozone 7 from Isotope, you want to tweet the hashtag AudioPolish as one word and the hashtag Ozone 7 as one word with the number 7 on the end to @SonicState and @Isotope Inc. That's AudioPolish and the hashtag Ozone 7 @SonicState @Isotope Inc. on Twitter, and you'll be entered to win thanks to their sponsorship. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Doty, pleasure to have you aboard. I'm sure you've probably got some synths to review, as we all do these days. There's just so many of the darn things. For God's sake, don't get into Eurorack modules. You'll never have a night's sleep.
No, there's a lot of stuff coming, including one surprise that you're already familiar with. I mean, synth, but I think other people will be kind of surprised. Also, now I feel like I have to get a D50, and all those years I kind of made fun of them. I'm sorry, Eric. And now I find out from Dave that all those patches are on there. Now I want one. Ugh.
Well, I'm pretty sure you can pick them up for a reasonable amount. Certainly for now. You better be quick, though. Anyway, thank you very much, Marc. Bob Moog Foundation is where you can find out Marc's day job and all his good work. Thank you. And also, Mr. Robbie Bronneman, again, thanks to your client for giving you the time off. And we'll see you out and about. I guess if you're on the road, we're not going to see all that much of you, I suppose.
No, well, yeah, no. I've got 3 weeks before I go. Oh, I forgot. I bought a new toy this week.
Okay.
I couldn't resist. I know I said I wasn't going to, but I ended up getting one. Because I had the 2-octave one, which I'm absolutely in love with, but then I was doing this other work on this new track with ambient stuff, and I was like, actually I don't really want to jump around with the octave buttons. So I got the 4-octave one, which I think is the perfect one.
Okay.
It's the perfect combination of all the elements.
Well, there you go.
I'm loving it.
Well, I'm pleased for you. I've still yet to start reviewing mine because I've got one in for look. Yeah, here we go.
Great. Nice.
In fact, the first job, what I did is I hooked it up to the Korg Volca FM, which was quite challenging actually, but I did manage to get it to work. But
Right.
Because it will do usual sort of MIDI duties if you so wanted to do. But there will be a review forthcoming at some point in the future. Yeah. And Mr. Dave Spears, thank you very much for digging out the D550 and giving us a little whistle-stop tour of the patches there. And
I'm going to leave you. I'll leave you with the end of Love Sexy, shall I?
Oh, all right then.
Where he says, "Hold on to your soul. We got a long way to go." And there he goes. I believe that patch was a kind of mistake or something. Something happened in the EEPROM. I don't know. Eric will tell you all about that.
Well,
but yes, thank you very much. I had somebody come in this room. Actually, I'll just leave you with this funny little anecdote. I had somebody completely non-musical, non-synthesis head come in this room the other day, and he said, "Oh, these don't look very modern." And I went, "No, they're quite old. Some of them date back to the 60s. And he looked at me completely seriously and went, "I suppose they'll do the job until you can afford something newer."
Hey. Excellent. That's a good one. That's a great. Actually, that reminds me one last anecdote before we go. I was reading. There was a chat. Just in my memory, I hadn't actually prepared anything, so I can't remember his name. But he said he was thinking about writing a book. And he had an anecdote. He went to play a gig in a barn on a farm somewhere, and he went over, and the farmer was kind of, as he was loading up, the farmer just said, "Oh yeah, you're a keyboard player, are you?" And he said, "Yep." And he said, "Oh, I bought this place off a keyboard player, Keith, I think his name was." And the guy said, "Oh, what, Keith Emerson?" He said, "Yeah, that's right, that's the guy." And he said this barn, it was just full of old keyboards and all that kind of stuff. And I guess, after I bought the place, I contacted him a number of times, said, "You're going to come and get these things?" But I'm guessing, they must have been, freebies off people because he never bothered. So I got one of the lads in with a truck, and what we did is, see that field over there? We dug a massive hole and we buried them in under 20 foot of clay. And the guy was like, "Oh wow!" So yeah. There's a huge trove of Hammonds and all sorts of things. I don't know if this is a true story, but it's a kind of, Mark, your face. We can only hope that there were no Moogs in there, and they were just some really crappy organs.
That team need to go there.
Sorry.
There needs to be a synth special of Time Team.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, we know where it is, don't we? Because Chris said where it was.
That's true. Yeah, maybe we should. Time Team for our US viewers is a UK archaeological primetime telly thing when they go and dig up people's gardens and find Roman remains and what have you. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you very much to our YouTube live viewers and all our people in the chat room, the fulsome chat room, which I'm going to say. And just to let you you know that I have edited up a version of the live performance that we shot. I'm just going to run it by everybody, make sure they're comfortable with all of the warts and all stuff going out. So there will be something there. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, and that's edited. So it's quite a lot of material. Anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Remember, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.